Praying in tongues. Now, the first occurrence of speaking in tongues occurred on the day of Pentecost in Acts 2 1:4. The apostles went out and shared the gospel with the crowd, speaking to them in their own languages. We hear them declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues. Acts 2:11 says. The Greek word translated for tongues literally means languages. Therefore, the gift of tongues is speaking in a language a person does not know in order to minister to someone who does speak that language. In 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 14 says, Paul discusses miraculous gifts, saying, Now brothers, if I come to you and speak in tongues, what good will I be to you unless I bring you the same revelation or knowledge or prophecy or a word of instruction? According to 1 Corinthians 14:6. According to the Apostle Paul, and in agreement with the tongues described in Acts, speaking in tongues is valuable to the one hearing God's message in his or her own language. But it is useless to everyone else unless it is interpreted or translated. When the Bible uses the term tongue, it refers to the normal spoken languages such as English, Spanish, Indian, French, or any other languages. The word tongue does not mean a strange, non-human sound or utterance. A tongue is a real, understandable human language, and therefore the spiritual gift of speaking in tongues always involves speaking a real human language, complete with syntax, vocabulary, and the sentence structure. The gift of tongues never involves making gibberish sounds or chanting repetitive phrases or nonsense words which does not have meaning. The person with the gift to speak in tongues will suddenly begin speaking in a recognizable human language that the person did not previously know and cannot understand. If that foreign tongue is spoken in the presence of a person who knows that language naturally, then he or she will immediately understand the speech because it is a natural language. If an English-speaking Christian with the gift of tongues is prompted by the Spirit to speak Spanish, then this person will not understand his or her own speech, which is the essence of the miracle. Nevertheless, anyone who knows the Spanish language could understand the speech perfectly. We can see this important principle evidenced in Acts 2. When the thousands of new Jewish Christians began to speak in unknown tongues at Pentecost, in Acts 2 4:8 we see plainly that these tongues were normal human languages that many foreigners in the crowd could understand naturally. According to Acts 2:6, and when this sound occurred, the crowd came together and were bewildered because each one of them was hearing them speak in his own languages. According to Acts 2:7, they were amazed and astonished, saying, Why are not all these who are speaking Galileans? Acts 2:8 further we see, and how it is that we each hear them in our own language to which we were born. And if you read further in Acts 2:9, it says, Parthians and Medes and Elamites and the residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia. So these are the people who came from these places. And again, when you see further, Acts 2:10 says, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt, and the districts of Libya around Cyrene, the visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes. Acts 2:11 says, Cretans and Arabs, we hear them in our own tongue speaking the mighty deeds of God. So the miracle of that moment was Galileans speaking foreign languages they did not know or even understand. So we notice that the visitor from those foreign regions could understand the speech because it was a true language. The Galileans were not speaking in gibberish or made up babbling sounds. They were speaking in a true human language, which was evidenced by the fact that some in the crowd could understand them naturally. The Galileans spoke in foreign languages they did not previously know, which is the miracle of tongues. Since the Bible testifies that authentic speaking in tongues involves speaking a real, knowable language, then the fact that modern day practice of speaking in tongues in some major churches involves uttering gibberishing chantative repetitive sounds, which is a clear evidence that it is a man-made attempt to imitate the work of God and not a genuine movement of the Spirit. Speaking in tongues is an important miracle that happened during the day of Pentecost after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It helped the apostles, disciples, and members of the church to preach the gospel throughout the world. Again, the speaking in tongues is nothing but different languages, because there is a need for the church members to speak in a language that people can understand. God gave them gift of speaking in tongues, which is nothing but different languages. Today there are almost no need for the miracle speaking in tongue anymore. God can use other tools and other methods to have His word proclaimed throughout the world. When you see churches claiming that they can speak in tongues, that should raise a red flag, because be careful, because evil spirits can imitate spiritual gifts and use them to confuse and deceive people. That's why we need to heed the instruction of Apostle John in 1 John 4:1. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone into the world. Don't be easily impressed with the people who claim to be speaking in tongues. As we have seen in the Bible, speaking in tongues means speaking in a clear and understandable language. It does not mean you speak in gibberish language and expect all other people to understand and deceiving others that's a holy language or the secret language with the Holy Spirit. And this is nothing but an uncontrollable gestures and actions. So instead of that, we know that in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of the power and of the love and of sound mind. There are two ways we can test the validity of tongues. Both can be used to test the validity of our own personal tongues, while one can be used to test the validity of others' tongues. Scriptures teaches us that the tongues are genuine languages. They are not meaningless sounds or gibberish sounds or words. Languages employ a variety of sounds to compose a variety of words. When you speak in tongues, you find that you are repeating the same few words over and over. It may indicate that you are not truly speaking in tongues, because you yourself do not know what you are speaking.